The replacement factor. Not knowing your enemy and not knowing what your enemy is doing is a huge problem. I'm going to start this video with a question. Simple. What is the enemy doing? What is the enemy doing? If you are caught up in man's religion, you're probably going to say something like, the enemy is trying to deceive me. Religiously, you get away with that. But truthfully, the enemy don't even care enough about you to be trying to deceive you. So religiously, you'll say, the enemy is trying to stop me from giving so I can get my blessing. You can get away with that in man's religion. But truthfully, the devil don't care whether you give or not. Truthfully, your enemy don't care whether you receive that blessing or not. So in religion, you will say something like, my enemy don't want me going to church. Can I be honest with you? The devil don't really care whether you go to church or not. So all of those religious answers need to be thrown away. I'm being serious. What is the enemy doing? The reason you don't know what the enemy is really doing is because you haven't studied your enemy. You don't know the enemy. If you want to know what the enemy is doing, just look at his track record. What has he always done? Just look at what he did back in the Bible. Because he's trying to accomplish the same thing even now. I call it the replacement factor. The enemy wants you destroyed. He's going about like a what? Roaring lion, seeking whom he can what? Devour. Devour. Satan don't care whether you go to church. Go to church. He wants to get rid of you. He don't care whether you giving. Go on and give. He wants to get rid of you. The enemy wants you replaced. If you look in scripture, when Christ himself explained what the enemy was doing, and I already know we overlooked it. It's been overlooked for years, lifetimes. But look what Christ said. He talked about planting wheat in a field. And when he explained planting wheat, he said it was God who put his people on earth. And then he talked about the enemy coming and sowing tares in with the wheat. And when he explained it, he said that the enemy sowing tares in the wheat was Satan putting his people in the midst of the wheat, in the midst of the people God put out here. Satan wants to replace wheat with tares. Your enemy wants to replace God's people with his own people. If you look in scripture, God said himself, I made man righteous. I made man righteous, but they sought out many inventions. God said, I made man like this, and he called it righteousness. You have to know what righteousness is according to God. According to God, when he made man righteous. That was righteousness. Satan wants to replace what God made with something that God did not make. Your enemy is replacing what God made with something that God did not make. Your enemy does not want you to be what God created. He will change you into something that God did not create. That's how he kills. If you allow yourself to be changed into what God did not create, that's how the enemy steals. When you allow yourself to be changed into something that God did not create, that's how the enemy destroys. Your enemy does not want you to live according to the way God designed you to live. Your enemy does not want you to live the way you were created to live. He wants to replace anybody and everybody who is of God with his own creation. Replacement factor. Have you even factored in that the enemy is actually accomplishing what he wants to do here on the earth? We don't even think about this stuff. If the scripture said Satan is going to do this, why then would you live your life as if Satan is not doing what God said he would do? If God said the enemy came to do this, why then would you go about your life and pretend that the enemy is not doing anything that God even said he would do? Why would you act as if your enemy is not trying to kill? Why would you act like your enemy is not trying to steal, not trying to destroy? The enemy is actually accomplishing the goal that he had planned for this earth. The only thing that's going to stop it is the return of Christ to put an end to the enemy and what he is doing. He ain't coming to put an end to what Satan wants to do. He's coming to put an end to what he is actually doing. He's going to be stopped dead in his tracks. But we can't be ignorant concerning what our enemy is doing. But because we are ignorant to that, Satan has replaced pastors with his own pastors, and we didn't recognize it. And because you didn't recognize it, you're sitting up listening to a replacement. Satan has replaced worshipers with his own worshipers. And because you didn't recognize it, you're sitting up here worshiping, listening to worshipers that are replacements. Satan has replaced bishops with things that look like bishops. And because we didn't recognize it, we're sitting up here following replacements. We're sitting up here having church services excited about what a replacement is lying to you about. We're sitting up here jumping and shouting, rejoicing over something that a replacement just lied about. Because we have never even thought about the replacement factor. You know why so many people are falling for lies? Because they're trusting the replacements. You know why so many people think they're in good standings with God, even though they're not living by scripture? Because they have been listening to a replacement. That ain't your pastor. That's a replacement. That's why he don't speak the truth. That's why he won't teach on certain things. That's why he avoids so many scriptures. That's not a worshiper of God. That's a replacement worshiper. That's why they are sing and worship saying this, but they live like that. It's past time for somebody to wake up and realize what life is really about. It's time for somebody to wake up and realize what living for God really means. It's time for somebody to wake up and see what we're really dealing with out here so we can endure until the end the right way. So we can be ready when this thing pops off, because it's going down right now, right before your eyes. You might not know it because you never thought about the replacement factor.